Okay, so this week we are going to be looking at discounts and tax. But to be able to do that, we need to know more about percent. So to start off, we're looking at here, percents are just fractions out of 100. That's all percent means. Another way to look at percent is if we break down the word, so percent. This part of our word, that just means of, and cent means 100. So we're just looking at our percent, which is of 100, or a fraction of 100. So let's look at this first example. The grid here is divided into 100 parts, and we just want to shade in 18 parts. So each of these rows are 10, so we can just quickly shade those in. Make sure you're also doing this on your page. Okay, and we'll leave 2 empty there. So I've shaded in 18 parts. So if I want to look at this as a percent, what percent of this grid have I shaded in? I've shaded in 18 of 100, which is 18%. Okay, the next thing I want to do is look at that as a fraction, because percent is just a fraction out of 100. So I'm just going to take this number and put it on top. And 100 is always the total, because 100 is all of the empty boxes that I have here, or the total number of boxes I have here. The next thing I want to look at is how could I represent this as a decimal? So all I have to do here is treat this fraction line as division like we have before. So I can take 18 and divide it by 100. Now you should be able to do this without a calculator. Okay, but if you don't, you can use your calculator. And you'll always get a decimal there, 0.18. Okay, so all we did is move the decimal place in 2 spots. So from 18% as a decimal is 0.18. Okay, now that's going to be really important when we're calculating discounts and tax, so that you know how to change a percent into a decimal. Okay, let's do another example. If I want to shade in 34 parts, so that's 3 rows, will give me 30. Okay, and then 4. So what percent of this did I shade in? Okay, I shaded in 34%. As a fraction, that's just 34 out of the 100 total boxes I had. And I can just divide that by 100 to get my decimal. Okay, last one we'll do together. I'm just shading in 8 parts here, so not a whole row. Okay, and that's just 8% of my total. If I want that as a fraction, 8 over 100. And if I divide 8 by 100, you got to be careful here, because it's going to be 0.08. So you got to be really careful when you look at that 0 there. Okay, another thing that you could do, sometimes we might want to go the opposite direction. So if I have a decimal and I want to get to a percent, I'm just doing the opposite of what I did before. So when I went this way, I divided by 100. If I want to go from my decimal to a percent, I'm going to multiply by 100. Okay, so that's a bunch of different ways that you can represent percent. You can look at it as a picture, percent, a fraction, and a decimal. Whenever you're looking at percent, you got to make sure you include that percent sign after the number. The next activity you're going to do, you should see a bunch of cut out pieces of paper. Your job is to match the picture, the percent, the fraction, and the decimal. All of them have to represent the same thing, and you're going to match that on a page and glue that down. Once you have finished that, and if you get confused, ask the teacher for further instruction. Once you finish that, go to the next page of your package, which looks like this. Okay, and you're going to work on that independently. So each of these percents, I want you to represent that as a decimal. Okay, if you forget, look back on the note we just did. For your next one, you're going to take each percent as a decimal, and then you're also going to show it to me as a fraction. So remember, percent is always out of 100. Even for big ones like this, 125% is still out of 100. Okay, and then The last one, there's a bunch of different types of questions here, so you might have to take a decimal and turn it into a percent or into a fraction or whatever. So make sure you're reading the question very carefully. Okay, and if you get through all of this, that's fantastic. I want you to move on to the next video.